Hey everyone, I am Kat B.
And I'm Angel Street.
And we are the hosts of the webcast UFOT.
But we love coffee and UFOs.
Hi, I'm Stephen Bassett, Executive Director of Paradigm Research Group, and I'm a really big supporter of coffee and UFOs.
Cheers, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and UFOs, two of my favorite things. I cannot live without either of them. And my guest tonight would appear can't live without UFOs based on her career and past history. Her name is Melissa Tittle. She is the founder of Hathor Studios, which specializes in films, TV shows, and short-form content that helps form a new narrative. Hathor Studios covers topics such as meditation, human potential, aliens, sci-fi, ancient civilizations, and much more. Formerly, she served as head of content and development for a new network called GAIA. Melissa can be considered an investigative journalist in ancient civilization, sci-fi, and the science fields, but she also produces transformation content, which we also do on this channel as well, with some of the biggest names in that space. She has produced and written TV shows for several major networks. A few samples of shows she has written and produced are Chelsea Does, Escaping the Prophet, Ancient Aliens, The Universe, and Hangar One. In the past, she dabbled in films, served as assistant to head of production at Paramount Studios, assigned to such features as Star Trek, Cloverfield, and Mission Impossible 2. If you like this content, please subscribe down below, hit the notification bell, share this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on tonight's conversations. We will be focusing on the Hudson Valley UFO phenomena in particular, because Melissa will be taking a trip out here actually in August to discuss that. Now we're going to bring on our guest, Melissa. Welcome to Coffee and UFOs.
Hi everybody.
Hey. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you cover a wide gamut of fields of mysterious topics, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask you, how did you get involved in ufology? Why is that something that is such of interest to you, that you've spent so many shows producing and now starring in too?
I love this question because I have the worst answer.
And that is?
Ever since I was a kid, I felt like I grew up in a family where we would talk about lots of weird stuff. We would talk about supernatural stuff, aliens, weird government projects. It was kind of normal. And as a kid, it also allowed me an outlet to think about what else is out there. I was just a curious kid. So as I eventually got into my career, it was so weird. It just found me. I mean, at one point I was working at Paramount Studios, and I was such a nerd for all those sci-fi movies and shows, and that was cool. And then I got a job working for NASA on the show Universe, which was a partnership between NASA and History Channel. And I just loved it. So I quit film and went into TV because I'm such a nerd for space. And of course, my boss, who I was working for the president at the time of Paramount Studios, he was like, "What are you doing? Like, you have the opportunity to like build your career up in film." And I'm like, "Nope, going to space." And then from there,
that's bold. That's a bold decision. I mean,
yeah,
not often do we get those kind of big opportunities.
Yeah, I don't have any regrets. It was just where the path was supposed to go.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then from there, it was Ancient Aliens and all sorts of paranormal shows. And then I just never left. I never left that space. We'll put it that way.
So you followed your heart, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's great.
So it wasn't like there was an experience that happened to me. I just felt that there's definitely these experiences happening to people. I always felt a connection to something bigger, whether it was scary or whether it was enlightening. And it wasn't, I didn't need it to surprise me, but it just kept going. When I got into Ancient Aliens, I thought, oh yeah, I know all this stuff. Like, let's go. Let's keep researching this. Yeah. It just made me excited because these are things I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Talk about the idea of human potential out there by exploring things that we don't know.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And the mystery is the potentiality. Not necessarily getting the answer. I think is a fruitful place to kind of thrive and live in, psychologically, spiritually. For the UFO enigma, what do you think, based on all of your work, what do you think is going on? Are there indeed aliens that have been visiting us for thousands of years here, or are we dealing with something that is novel?
I think the human race has been dealing with something supernatural and unknown and interdimensional or from another planet since the beginning of our existence,
Hmm.
which says to me that we're all kind of existing in space and time at the same time, whether it's in this space of time or another space of time, and an interdimensional travel, if you will. But um, I think we have this idea that we are here, and then
Hmm.
they started coming to us, or they created us, and then they're coming to check on us. But I think we've always been coexisting in some space or form.
Okay.
And the way that over the years, over the thousands of years, and of course that can be debated how long humanity has been here,
Hmm.
um, hundreds of thousands of years, in every cave painting, in any temple, there is an explanation of something supernatural that humans are dealing with.
Yeah.
I think that that's really telling. And maybe we only have recordings of people's abduction experiences or UFOs in the sky the last 50, 60 years. But before that, um, I think that the recordings were on walls. They were in the mythology. They were in the understanding of how the universe works.
Yeah, they were doing the same thing we were doing now, just with different technology. Yeah.
Exactly.
So does you covered Whitley Streamer on Shock Docs, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So
The vi-
Whitley comes at this from a very interesting perspective, and
Mhm.
he really plays with that line between what's real and what isn't real, or what might be of another dimension versus a physical reality. Uh, what do you take away from his work? Do you think that we're dealing with something that is kind of metaphysical in a sense, rather than ETs coming from an off-world planet just by the physics that we're familiar with?
Um, that's a good question. The best when a lot of okay, let's put it this way. Let's back it up a little bit. A
Hmm.
lot of quantum physicists, a lot of scientists would rather believe, and I'm talking people that are not in the space and not looking for UFOs and don't really want to talk about it.
Hmm.
They would most likely believe, and they are okay believing, we'll put it that way,
Okay.
that there is an interdimensional presence, something that is advanced like that can be able to travel interdimensionally without a ship. So the reason I'm saying that
Hmm.
is that the idea of a ship is a concept I think we understand because we can wrap our human brain around it.
Okay.
I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm saying that they do, but do they need them? I don't think so. And that is why when he's having experiences that are, I keep using the word supernatural, he's having an experience with an interdimensional being or several,
Hmm.
and he ends up in a ship. I think that that's all real, but it's also the confines of what our human brain can actually understand.
Yeah, this is actually familiar with other abductees where they are able to kind of separate like a dream state,
Mhm.
a non-physical visitation, and what they would call a physical visitation. I always found this interesting because as an abductee, if you are able to distinguish these separate kinds of experiences, that to me is at least supportive evidence that there's a real phenomena going on. It's like if you and I were to confuse our dream world with our reality, we wouldn't do that, right? We function, we wake up, we know the difference between a
Mhm.
daydream, a nighttime dream, and reality, and that's what a lot of these abductees have to share in their experiences. What was the most engaging story that you've heard of an alien abduction in your research?
Yikes, man, there's so many. um, I can't say this that so a lot of people ask me, do you really think people are being abducted, or is that a
Hmm.
government program? I can't necessarily say yes or no, but I can say that if it is a government program, it has not changed very much since the 1940s when people started reporting this stuff and people started writing about it or telling people or reporters were writing about it. The stories have not changed. So if somebody got abducted yesterday, like the actual story hasn't changed. So what I look for as a reporter is I look for a pattern in the storytelling. I feel like if it was a government program, I think they would have upped their game a little bit, that the experiences would have changed a little bit. The story would have changed just a tiny bit, like the technology would have gotten better or something, even though if it was just a government thing.
Sure. And that's interesting. That's really interesting. So it's almost like, okay, whatever tools the government would be using to perpetrate this fraud, inevitably, 80s, 90s, 2000s, they would be using different technology, and there would be some sign of that appearing in the tactics that they use and whatnot. Yeah, that's really interesting.
I mean, right? I mean, even if they were being like, okay, we got to do the same script, and you wear the reptilian outfit, and we're going to do that one thing, and but the script would still, the details that people would tell would be different. So that's one thing I've noticed; they're the same.
Yeah. Well, it's actually funny when you just said that. I'm kind of laughing because it's like a bunch of like players in like Shakespeare theater, right? Like, you do this, no, you do that. Like, I did that role last time.
Short straw. You got to wear the reptilian outfit.
Right, exactly. And it kind of gives credence to the idea that it would be extraordinarily complicated for the U.S. government to pull something off like this, I think.
Yeah. I'm not saying that that's not happening. I'm just saying that as a pattern, as a journalist, you think that the stories would change, that somehow the technology would be different. I just posted something today, actually, from UFO Witness, that in the last 5 years, the sightings, what people have been seen in the sky has changed a bit, right? We're dealing with cubes now, and we're dealing with kind of these like morphine jelly type formations that seem to be telepathic with people that didn't exist 5 years ago. So you think about that, like there's the things that we are seeing now are changing, but the story of abduction is the same.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have to tell you, I was kind of in shock. So I was having a conversation on Coffee and UFOs with Dr. Robert Davis and Dr. Gary Nolan. And Bob Davis brought up this idea of plasmoids having a sort of consciousness, like what we might consider an earthlight, right? And that they're sort of a collective, almost like a beehive, and that there's actually potentially a consciousness there, and that there's studies that go into this. And I kind of blew my mind. I hadn't really considered that possibility. And then I thought about how when people have these close encounter experiences with, let's say, greys, right, that there's this sort of hive mind behavior with some of these smaller greys in particular. Have you come across anything that is hive mind like that you think supports this theory?
Yeah, with the greys and communicating telepathically, even with humans and everything. Yes, definitely. There's definitely like a hive mind. There's like a consensus between people that have had experiences, abductees, people that have witnessed them, people that feel like they've been telepathically communicating with greys. Even I was just reading something, I don't know if it's true or not, but somebody had worked scientifically on the plasma of the EB's blood. And they talked about how they're very similar to humans. They're just slightly different. But there's this idea that the way that they're built is like a worker bee. That there'd be no reason for them to exist except for to get a job done. They can't procreate. Their body is just built to be doing something, not to sustain itself for a certain long period of time. So besides the telepathic thing, yes, definitely. From many stories and research, that seems to be the case.
Yeah, well, you have your own sort of intuition ability, don't you?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
I'm like, with Ben and I, when we were in Hudson Valley, or we did the show UFO Witness, I think I was more Mulder and he was Scully, but
Yeah, I picked up that vibe a little bit. Right. Was that intentional or just kind of where you were that day or those days?
No, I just think it's not that I'm more of a believer. It's just I look at things differently. I really read the situation. I think we've come to a point in UFO UAP research and discussing aliens where we can't just measure the trajectory and the burn marks in the grass. Those are physical evidence, and we need that stuff so we can kind of figure out what kind of craft it was or what kind of physical evidence in this space and time. But also we're at a point where we need to look at things differently so we can understand what we're dealing with. We need to go beyond our own three-dimensional understanding. And with that, I think the good thing of us being a team was that I'm using my intuition to lead us to the next clue so we can find more evidence instead of it only being, this versus this, and then that makes it real. I think for most people, it's not even the conversation of is it real or not. It's more like, why is it happening and who are they? And what do they want?
And what do they want? Yeah, that's why to me there's this ontological aspect to all of this. And I love all the hard-nosed, like hardcore UFO nuts and bolts people, but
we need those.
We need those, right? Yeah, but I think you can do both. I think you can have a leg in both lanes.
I agree.
Which seems, you seem to be comfortable there. Have you ever had for lack of a better word, a paranormal experience yourself?
I have many. I feel that I'm pretty sensitive, so I can pick up energies and things. It's rare that they can clearly communicate with me. I think there's part of me that blocks it off because I'm like, okay, not right now.
I'm in your camp for sure.
Yeah. I got other things to do. Cannot help you right now. But there are some. So for instance, I've been a lot of ancient sites that for ancient civilizations and those kinds of shows that I've been writing. We discuss aliens, but a lot of those sites have they're not even paranormal. They're just energies. So I don't know if that counts as interdimensional energies, but they are strong. I think I had a moment in one temple where I had missing time. Nobody could find me for 2 hours. And I thought it was 5 minutes. And I just walked around by myself, but they couldn't find me.
Wow.
The temples aren't that big. I mean, they're large, but they're not you can't miss somebody for 2 hours.
It's not a maze, right?
Yeah, it's not a maze. So there's definitely those kind of energies. But I would say, I was just speaking at the Ohio Reformatory, where they do a huge paranormal event, and they had aliens this year, so I got invited. And they wanted us all to, stay the night in this haunted, prison, which is so scary. And this is not something I like to do. I think sitting out in a field and waiting for aliens to land is a little bit different than waiting for ghosts to poke you. So this wasn't my favorite, but. So I'll tell you what happened. This is just recently.
Is this a ghost poking story?
It's totally. They stuck me and 2 other people and then a group of people in solitary confinement. Okay. Which, of course, that's awful. So we're in solitary confinement, waiting for the ghosts to come out. We have all the devices out, and I kept thinking I was in a Faraday cage. I was like, I'm just going to visualize a Faraday cage. Yep. Archangel Michael, right? And all of a sudden I can't remember what it's called now, but they're able to scan. They have a scanner. So if anything comes into a shape or kind of messes with it electromagnetically, it'll snap a picture of the shape.
And an SLL.
Yes, it was an SLL camera.
Okay. Yep.
And so there was something crawling towards us, and it was snapping picture. And we were like, oh my God. So I was just doing my Faraday cage thing. Yeah, that's okay. It's all happening. It's not coming to me. And then it just disappeared. And then it was 10 minutes had passed and we weren't getting anything. So one of the women had one of those ghost box things, and she was saying, why aren't you speaking to us? And the thing kept repeating prayer. Because I was Archangel Michael.
Yeah.
And it kept saying entity fear, and I'm like, am I
wow
afraid to come in because I created the Faraday cage? I don't know, but I'm like, I am here. I'm out of here.
or afraid because you're calling Michael, and they're like, nah, I don't,
Nope,
I don't,
not
I don't need to
that
deal with
one.
Michael right now. Yeah.
Oh, and
These-
that same
yeah.
experience, two guys in the same spot, like they switched spots. They started having like a heart attack. Like they were like crying, and they were like they couldn't breathe, and I'm like, okay, maybe you gotta go. Maybe you should leave. I think
Yeah,
whatever it is was like tapping their energy. It was dark. It was some dark stuff. That's just a recent one. But yes, I've had a lot of paranormal weird experiences.
Yeah. The only time I ever had a heart experience like that was when I overdid it on coffee. That's, pretty much the close. I mean, when I was younger, oh my gosh.
Do a podcast.
Yeah. Well, I used to, when I'm back in my younger days, like, in my 20s, I was bartending, and I would drink like 8 espressos easily a day because the machine's right there. You make the espresso, you make your drinks, you keep going. So yeah, and I would not over caffeinate if I were to go on a ghost hunt. I can tell you that much. But you're right. And there's something nice about, stargazing and kind of waiting, to see if a UFO comes by and what have you. Because, it's beautiful. Like, the stars are out. You're outside, usually in a not so populated area. The air is good. The sounds of nature. And I think that's, there's a certain romanticism about searching for UFOs.
Until
And
Bigfoot shows up, and then it's all over.
which in the Hudson Valley, you guys were like, let's do all 3. let's try it out all in one shot. So actually, can you tell us a little bit about your visit to the Hudson Valley and what you uncovered or may have uncovered?
So Hudson Valley was interesting. I've never spent a lot of time up there personally, but I had read a lot about it. My dad was in the Air Force, and he told me that there was definitely a special ops base close to a lot of where the UFO activity was, just north of there, like an hour. So I remember when I was coming there to investigate, I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what was going on there during the 80s. And we had several conversations with people that knew about the base, police officers, some people that had worked at the base, but it didn't seem like either they didn't know what was happening, or they really didn't have the technology to be flying some kind of UFO looking stuff. But the Hudson Valley was so strange. There is such an intensity in such a large area. Like usually there's a vortex area, or there's happening, and it's like somebody's ranch, or it's this. I mean, a ranch can be a big piece of property too, but Hudson Valley is quite huge. I mean, you've got, it spans over a couple states here on the East Coast. It's home to rare amounts of different plant life and animal life. There seems to be also a strange amount of mineral deposits. There's like ancient tales of druids coming here. And then you get into the UFO stories from the 80s of like 6,000 cases.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And then it stops
right.
for a while. And then it just picks up. And then we're back in another flap where people are seeing all of these different kinds of UFOs. And it's not just one. It's all different kinds of things. It's all the things that we're talking about, these amoeba-looking things. It's cigar-shaped. It's triangle-shaped. It's flying saucers. The beings coming out of the woods. They have all sorts. There's just like fairies. Like I've heard literally everything.
Everything, yeah.
Glowing orbs. So there's something about Hudson Valley specifically, and my investigative mind thinks that if this is some kind of doorway between all these different dimensions, there has to be something unique about the mineral property of the rocks and the area itself. There's just something that allows it to be this place. I mean, a lot of times when I go places, and this played a part in our research, I find that the place is activated by the people that are there. There's sometimes people become the conduits for things to pass through.
Okay.
And we did try that theory with DNA, and we discovered that most of the experiencers that we came in contact, that we were able to test their blood, had an Rh negative level.
Okay.
And of course, there is that theory that there's more alien contact with people who have Rh negative blood types.
You guys actually did the testing yourself?
We did. We had somebody help us because we
Or
wanted
third party, sure, yeah.
to make sure that we were doing that right.
Right. But I mean, I didn't realize that was part of your team, your production. Okay, because when
Yeah.
you referenced it in the video, I just thought, oh, maybe someone had done some sort of separate study. Because I always wondered about that. Do you think that we should, at some point do like a large scale study and really get a wide sampling to find out what's going on? Because sometimes I do wonder, maybe it's not just Rh negative, maybe it's maybe there are other blood types that people fall into other types of categories related to phenomena.
I mean, I agree. I mean, let's just take this instance. For people that'll have near-death experiences, normal people. When I say normal, I mean they haven't had any experiences. Just go about
First time experience, sure.
Yeah. Right. There's something. They have a near-death experience. They come back into their body, and all of a sudden they have like abilities. They see stuff. They're telepathic. They're all of a sudden being in contact with stuff. So it's not an Rh negative thing. There's something that happened to them physically that they are now able to have abilities in this lifetime. In this time and space. Whether it be being telepathic or something like that, or seeing things or being in contact. Like I've interviewed people that just normal person, not interested in any of this stuff, all of a sudden has complete contact with like 5 Palladian beings that they talk to all the time. Like I don't think that they'd be making that up if they came all the way back from the dead and they were like wanted an extra story. They already have like a great story called I Just Made It Back from the Dead. And where does that ability come from? They didn't turn into Rh negative overnight. I think it's something changed within their biological structure that they're able to connect with something or see it where most of the time they weren't able to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not a scientist, but I was reading recently how the Michael J. Fox Foundation had released some information about how there are key markers that they can find now to diagnose potentially someone who might have Parkinson's disease. And Michael J. Fox was saying that it was happenstance. He might have lived his life and not gotten Parkinson. It's a series of just coincidences and moments that can trigger the DNA and turn that gene on. Environmental factors, stress, what have you. And so I wonder, maybe that's what we're seeing here. Maybe there is a gene we should be looking for within us that gets turned on, or in a way that it doesn't have a needed function in our everyday human life. But then once some strange outside thing comes and approaches you, maybe that's the trigger. Maybe it just turns it on. Yeah,
maybe, because there's also people that I'm working on something now that has something to do with that, but I can't talk about it. Top secret.
Okay, well, so we'll consider it a tease. What's the project? Do you know?
It's blood testing on people that are doing intense meditations and how that changes your blood. And they have direct evidence of how that happens, like a matter of days. So, I mean, if you can imagine, that's why I feel that when people have these experiences and they just automatically change, like they're connected with something bigger and they can see it. And then for people that didn't happen, so there's a lot of people that just become conduits for things to happen. So for instance, if there's a haunted house, sometimes it's the person who's interacted with a certain energy and then they become attached, or they're able to communicate through that person and they won't leave the house, or they follow that person to the next place. So it's really strange. It's like there's so much going on in a million dimensions around us at all times. And only when you're tuned into the right station, using your biological material, can you see, feel, and experience it, which is insane if you think about that.
It really is. I mean, and the mind really is amazing. And that's why there's always this sort of consciousness element that's involved in these conversations. I mean, you have really smart people, you have scientists that are looking at the consciousness component to this. I'd been slacking off heavily on meditation for a while, and literally last night Like I spent like a good 20 minutes meditating. And today, like early in the day, my head was so clear just from that short period of time, and actually doing it. And it's like, wow, I totally forgot how good that felt. And those sort of efforts. And that's why I always find this topic so interesting, because where we put our intention, where we direct ourselves, we receive something back. Do you think that we're supposed to receive something in particular back? Those of us who are enthusiasts, and for those of us who have been in contact with these others, whatever they might be.
Receive something back, meaning the receiving being them connecting with you, or something else?
Or something else. Just looking into the black void, right? Or just seeking this thing out, trying to find out what are these things. Does that have any sort of, psychological effect on us that you think is noticeable, or spiritually shifting in some way?
Oh, I think so. I mean, you brought up Whitley Streamer. His experience was not friendly, right? At all.
No.
And he was pretty, it was torturous in a way. But what happened to him, he's still not going to say it was a good thing. But
I lost your mic a little bit, Melissa. It got kind of muffled.
I
can hear you. It's a little muffled.
Oh, that's so weird. Hold on.
Oh, that's better. Yeah.
Is that better? Okay, how's that?
Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So he has this thing that happens to him that's really bad, and then somewhere along the lines, I'm not sure exactly what moment, he somehow takes it as a sign, and he starts to see visions of what his world is going to happen to his world, and that he has to be involved with helping people understand what's going to happen to their world. And he takes it as an omen, and he realizes that he had to have this contact to be able to tell these stories to humans, to be able to get them to understand not only who they are, but who these beings are, right? I think that the message for all of us is different. I think that a lot of people are having contact, and what they're getting back are messages, sometimes scary and sometimes enlightening. And I think that's for you to decide based on where you are with your reality and how you are seeing things at that moment in time. And I think that people having experiences with otherworldly beings allows us as humans to understand that we must figure out what that means. So that we know who we are in the universe and our capabilities are, and what our capabilities are. Because I think there's a lot of us and them. There's aliens and there's humans, and aliens have a lot more power than humans do. But I think that we're all in this cosmos together. We're just maybe a little more undeveloped because we really don't know what our potential is. And I think that people having contact with otherworldly beings, or even this conversation, allows people to open up and be like, okay, if that was real, what would that mean for me? Instead of us and them.
So it's like we're potentially a part of a symbiosis that we just don't understand yet.
Yes. I think when I really think about like the questions, why are they here and what do they want, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you can go in such a dark hole because it seems like it would be opportunistic, right? Like they want our resources, they want our DNA, blah, 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 blah. They want hybrid children, whatever it is. I'm not saying that's not true, but what if the bigger view is that we are all in this together? We just cannot see past what we know our reality is right now, because we are just not trained to understand that. So us having this conversation and the people listening allows for a bigger understanding of where we are in the universe, I think.
Have you ever done psychedelics?
Yes.
You have. Do you find that there are any similarities between the kind of experiences we've been talking and your psychedelic experience?
For sure. I mean, you do ayahuasca. I felt like I was in the plant consciousness. I was in a different realm of how plants communicate, and then another level of that consciousness, and then beings, and then there's all the other stuff that happens.
Yeah, I've never done ayahuasca, but I've done mushrooms, and so I've never really tapped in purely to that plant consciousness in the same way. But I did tap into this kind of super consciousness.
Yeah.
And did you get that feeling that there's this oneness to everything? Did you ever?
Yeah,
pick that
yeah.
up? Yeah.
Just that there's so many dimensions of, like, I know we're talking like two people that have like are on, been done a million shrooms, but there's
Yeah.
just like that's why people like do that, like in the movies. They're
Mhm.
like, because there's just so many levels of color and things, and like,
Right.
and you could just stare at it forever. You just be like, wow, there's just so much going on.
How do you plug back into everyday life after that? Because I know for me, it was not easy. Like to go right back into the routine, and I mean, especially someone like yourself, you have a heavy schedule, you're busy. Do you have a little time to come decompress before you jump back into things?
God, I wish. I think like most recently I did a meditation retreat, and it was really intense. And I felt like I had the same experience, except I wasn't partaking in any plant medicine or anything like that.
Hmm.
But I was in a really deep space. I was in another state of consciousness. And I think what was hard was that I was in such a level of bliss when I came home, and I was just like, everything's gonna be fine. It's gonna work out. And it just took 24 hours, and I was back to worrying. It was
Interesting.
more like I didn't want to leave that state of my own existence.
Yeah.
It wasn't like something I did that. I created that within myself, and I didn't want to leave it. But it's just like the world just chips away at you, and you're like, okay, I got to worry again.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, usually I had more of a lingering effect. In fact, it was a little unnerving because it was like everything I see around me seems kind of absurd, like the way we worry about things and do things and fuss and this and that. But then you're right. Eventually, you kind of just wean back into it. Um, Terrence McKenna and Dennis McKenna in the Invisible Landscape book, if I'm recalling the correct book, said that they had seen a UFO in the Amazon while they were tripping on mushrooms. And I think that and I think that and that we're talking, I think this is 70s when they had that experience.
Mhm.
So sure, Passport to Patagonia was released by then, but really it wasn't a prominent idea in the cultural landscape. This idea that these might be kind of otherworldly beings that step into our consciousness.
Mhm.
In your research, as it more journalistically, right? And you're going on site, you're talking to witnesses. Have you seen anything in particular that would support this idea that these are just other consciousnesses coming into our consciousness? Is there one thing you look at and you go, yeah, I think that might be it?
That might be it. That one story.
Or it could be your own story, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, God, one story. See, the hard thing is that I have so many. So I'm trying to think of like what's
And they're
one.
similar, so they can kind of blend
Yeah, that's why
together. I get
that's why
that.
I talk about like patterns. I'm like, well, the patterns are. I know nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear like a story that's like entertaining and full of drama.
Well, I'll tell you mine really quick. So
Okay,
I was going. I'll take you off the hot seat. So I was going through a period years ago again where I was very into highly metaphysical, everything, books, podcasts, meditation, music,
Mhm.
pot, whatever. And I had this dream, and it was a recurring dream, but there was like these type of kind of gray
Mm.
alien, right, came into the dream, and then it gave me this kind of image of what was like a circle with a triangle, blue and yellow, and I think like a faint of pink or red,
Mm.
and there was like this image like burned into my my dream, right? And I didn't understand it. It was weird. I don't think I'm an abductee or anything like that.
Mhm.
But okay, so was it a dream, or what? Was something kind of sending me this message? Not too long after that, my wife and I went to Cosm in Alex Gray's art gallery
Cool.
in New York, and that was the symbol of the art gallery. And I thought that is very, very bizarre that this would kind of occur at the same time.
Hmm. Did you find anything in the art museum? That was
Well,
interesting.
I mean, his art is all psychedelically inspired,
Mhm.
DMT, acid, whatever, and so the imagery uh, was of raising one's vibration to a higher level, connecting on the soul level,
Hmm.
our connection to Earth and plant nature, all that. But it was just the timing of it. It was like there was, because I was in that phase, and so to me it really did feel like there was some outside influence, something that was kind of pressing in on my
Mhm.
psyche.
Okay.
I don't know if it's real or not, but that's what it felt like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. It could also be, we don't really know what all the consciousnesses are, right? Like it could have been your higher self, and they were like, "We're gonna send some grays because he's gonna get it then."
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And I wasn't afraid. A little eerie, like if you're walking in the woods and maybe you came across an animal, you might initially kind of, be on your guard a little, but that's all I felt. I didn't feel a threat.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's very cool. I can say I've had a similar experience. I just finished a documentary, and it's just not released yet, but it's it's on a personal journey from a vision I had over and over and over again. I would dream about it, I would meditate, and I would see the same thing over and over again. At first I was like, maybe I'm just in fantasy land, right? Like maybe somehow this image that just keeps coming
Yeah.
up is and the crazy thing, I didn't tell anybody about it. And I'm in this space, right? I could talk to anybody about it. I'm having this vision, and it's this thing. And then one day I was like, I need to discover what this thing is, and I'm going to make a documentary about it. And now I can talk about it. It's like the weird, and now it's stopped happening. So I don't know what its
Interesting.
purpose was, but the image is this. It's apparently me. I mean, I'm like POV. It's me, right? I'm in the body, whatever it is, and I'm in a desert. And it's a specific looking desert. It's not just any desert. It's a specific looking desert. And I'll tell you what that desert is because I did some research. And I go to the place in this, and I have a staff, and I hit at this exact point, and then from there all these concentric circles move the sand in concentric circles as if there's like a thing underneath it. And then all these 12 lines come up through, and then all of a sudden and then it blows out with light, and then I'm back. And then it happens again, over and over again. So I just kept researching because I'm like, what is this symbol I keep seeing with the 12 spokes and the concentric circles and the wheel and the thing in the middle? It's just so odd.
What did you?
Anyway, I made
on your journey, did you discover anything about it that?
Yeah, it's a symbol everywhere. It blew my mind. This podcast isn't long enough for us to keep talking about this, but soon it'll be out. It's this movie called Code 12. I ended up linking it to like this symbol to every ancient culture, to every mythology, to quantum physics, to biology. It was insane. It was like this image.
Yeah. It's called Code 12 coming out.
Yeah, that's the name of the movie. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Before we run out of time, yes, you're coming to the Hudson Valley in August. Can you tell us about that and what you and Ben have planned?
Well, actually, the conference is in Lilydale. Do you know where that is?
I do, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Lilydale is I've actually never been there, but it's a big like weekend long festival, and Ben and I are going to be speaking about Hudson Valley and some of the stuff that we've gathered and why it's a really unique place and why it continues to be a place of investigation. And then my movie Code 12 is doing a special screening on that Sunday.
Oh, nice. Okay. So will it be an opportunity for people to go there and Q&A with you guys?
Yeah, of course. Of
Okay.
course.
Very cool. Are you going to do some investigating while you're back?
We should. I don't know.
Take
Ben,
advantage.
yeah.
There's
It's
always
funny.
something strange happening here.
Ben and I are like, it's like we don't always see eye to eye, so we make for a good comic routine because we kind of make fun of each other at the same time, you know?
Yeah. It's you were talking about earlier about all these different kinds of craft and this and that.
Huh.
And well, first let me ask you this. So what's your take on David Grush?
My take on David Grush.
Mhm.
I feel that he's definitely I think he's definitely seen something.
Mhm.
I don't think the military is very happy with him. I think that
Yep.
when I saw his interview on News Nation, he seemed pretty confident, and his body language was one that had seen something, but he was delivering it, and he
Mhm.
was like, "Okay, I'm going through with this." You know what I mean? Like that kind of attitude. Um, I'd love to see an interview with him now after several weeks because
Mhm.
the community will eat you alive.
Yeah,
Um,
which is probably why he's not doing any interviews right
yeah,
now.
he's probably
Yeah.
hiding out right now.
Yeah.
So, but I do believe he has something, and I think that as you know, and people maybe listening to this, that it has been heating
Mhm.
up. It's out of control. Like there's senators coming forward. But here's what I warn people. Disclosure is happening. Yes, it's slow, but the thing is, people aren't ready for the truth. The journey to the truth is more exciting for people than the truth. Like, how many people have to come
Mm.
forward and say this is happening, right? Before people are like, okay, this is 100% happening, and now we want more answers. Like, you have a group of people wanting answers, but there's lots of other people out there just like not caring about what's happening. So I think that it's happening. And I think we just need to be aware of the agendas that people might be having, whether they're
Mhm.
political, or they want you to look over here where something's happening. But when people are like, it's not happening, it's been happening for years, they've been saying the same stuff. I mean, they have, but it's changed a little bit because more people are open. So I think just staying neutral, really looking at all the sides, and I think that the way that it's heating up is because there is stuff coming out, and we just need to be vigilant with the information and not try to jump on one political bandwagon or the next.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. If David Grush were to have done interviews, podcasts, that sort of thing afterwards, his words could easily be taken out of context because that was definitely a rehearsed interview, right? I mean, they definitely prepared
Mhm,
questions. Ross knew what to expect
mhm.
and what to ask. And
Right.
so now, if David Grush is indeed legit, maybe that's actually the most responsible thing to do, and to not just jump out there and start doing interview here, interview there,
Mhm.
because he knows that it's already a volatile subject and potentially volatile for his position in life, whatever that might be, his reputation, etc.
Yeah.
So to keep it a little bit more controlled, keep to the script. Like, this is what I know, and this is what I don't know, and that's it. It's safer, and then let the next person come forward. Which I did think that there would be someone probably by like August or September following up, because I imagine he wouldn't want to go out on his own for too long.
Mhm.
I kind of have a sense that he might have had a conversation with someone else or someone's else
Yeah.
um, who might be coming forward.
Oh, I think that he has paved the way for a lot of people to come forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't think that he would have come forward if he didn't already know someone else would be willing to after him.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good observation. I mean, I would agree with you. I think that's what I mean. It's heating up. There's a lot
mm,
of stuff
mhm.
coming out. And that's why we don't want to jump to conclusions. Like I could come up with all sorts of reasons why I think he's lying, or that it's they're doing something so we don't know what the government's doing. I mean, that could be happening, but I think that this conversation is important and it's
Mhm.
heating up, and we really need to pay attention to all the pieces that are happening. I think people just want to hate sometimes, like they just want to.
They do, or they just want attention, or who knows what.
Mhm.
I saw a tweet on Twitter recently, and it was basically kind of criticizing the "I want to believe" mentality. And I was like, really? You're gonna go there? Like that's not the way to do it. That's X-Files. That's fun. And also it's that phrase is a brilliant phrase because it says, I want to believe. It's not, I
do believe.
do believe. Right. Right. It's like the truth is out there. You're not saying I know where the truth is, but it's out there, whatever it might be. And I think that that's why they stand the test of time. But some people, they just really, they have a hard time with the speculative aspect of ufology and these subjects.
Yeah. Well, now it's becoming a political thing, right? So if you're into aliens, then you must be into government conspiracy, and then you're into QAnon, and then you're definitely voting for one side or the other. I mean, it's just, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you want to understand what's happening with otherworldly beings and the UFO UAP phenomenon, then I think just stick to the middle road. Don't get caught up in who's saying what and what party they're in and what they're saying, because that's where you lose it. And that's where people that are writing memes like I want to believe are just saying people want to believe anything, and they're getting caught up in politics. So
yeah. Do you think Roswell was indeed a real crash?
I do.
You do?
I mean, there were several. There was like 3 crashes all in the same like in the couple days.
Within just a couple of years. Yeah, you had the Aztec crash. You had Roswell, and then you had
the Trinidad? No.
Trinity. Yeah. So within like 2 years' time. That's crazy. And the Kenneth Arnold, obviously, the sighting that kind of kicked all this off. So yeah, something was definitely occurring, which always begs the question, right? If they're so advanced, why do they crash?
I mean, again, we're back to the whole interdimensional travel versus craft. And then you get into the whole government conversation. Are these beings working with the government? These kind of like idea of worker bee rays. Or have they figured out how to travel interdimensionally and they still need to travel within a craft, right? Like we think of I've interviewed lots of people that are just speaking with beings and see beings that are existing in light or some other existence, right? That don't necessarily travel, they just kind of appear. But then you have these kind of gray worker bee types that are in these ships. So maybe they're not as advanced as some of those other interdimensional beings, but they have figured out the one thing that we seem to have not figured out unless there's a secret space program, which is how to control space and time.
Yeah, Gary Nolan actually made an interesting observation. He proposed the idea that what if, even if they were, let's say, on a 4th or 5th dimension, and they could travel within the dimension of time, what if they could do that, but they're really actually not all that advanced psychologically?
Oh, psychologically, but how could they? I mean, that could happen. I
don't know. I mean, you would imagine if you have the bandwidth in your mind, right, to be able to traverse time and space,
that you would have to be able to.
But then again, look at where we live, right? Like on this planet, there's these different levels of consciousness. Apes, dolphins, humans, a fly, and we're all in the same dimension. So maybe something similar exists on another dimension where you have just different levels of
what is consciousness, right? Like you can have a high awareness of how something operates, but you might not have a high emotional IQ, right? And that's a different kind of consciousness.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would make sense if the Greys didn't have a certain level of emotional IQ, but they had the ability to understand things. They understand emotion, but they don't necessarily have the emotional IQ to really get it, in a sense,
Oh, like, yeah.
We meet humans like this all the time. They have their emotional IQ is like 0.
Right, exactly. We won't be naming names, but exactly. Yeah, it's true. It's true. And it's it's a spectrum, of course.
So that could be it too. I just think that to have that ability to understand, to traverse space and time, I mean, you'd have to have some kind of high level intellect. Otherwise, we would be doing that. But again, we might have something that they don't have, which is a different kind of intellect.
Okay, and last question. Do you, Melissa Tittle, think that dragons are real?
Yes, I do.
All right. You heard it here first, everybody. On the record. All right. Melissa, thank you so much for being with me. I really appreciated it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And if you find out more, please go to hathorstudios.com and keep an eye out for all of their shows. And I have to say, anybody who has Max or used to have HBO Max, all of those Discovery shows are now on Max, which is fantastic because we've been without cable for years. So I was like, oh my God, it's like a treasure trove that I can check out now. So that's for all y'all out there with Max. Go check out all of Melissa Tittle's shows. If you go into Max and just search Melissa Tittle, all of the shows will pop up. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. As usual, if you like this podcast and you listen to it wherever you listen to your podcast, please leave a review, rate. If you're here on youtube.com/Mystic Lounge, please leave a comment down below, subscribe, click the notification bell, and share wherever you like. Thank you so much for your support. Peace and love. And until next time, be well.